Hello and welcome everybody to today's webinar, Introduction into Visual Production Scheduling with Dynamics 365 Business Central. My name is Martin Karlovic and I'm your today's host. I'm CEO and co-owner of NETRONIC Software, and at NETRONIC I'm responsible for strategy, innovation and go-to-market. During this webinar you are all on mute because we don't want to get disturbed by background noise, but of course I'm more than happy to discuss and chat with you, answer your questions, hear your comments, hear your suggestions. So whenever you have something that is unclear during the webinar, then please type into the chat function. While I'm here on PowerPoint, I will see these comments and your questions immediately, and then I try to answer them also immediately. If I'm doing a demo, then I won't see the pop-up notification of GoToWebinar, and then I will answer your question afterward. At latest, I will answer all the questions at the end of this webinar, which I assume will take an hour from now. If you have any question that you don't want to discuss in, let's say, public during this webinar, then you can reach out to me via email or connect on LinkedIn and message me there or message me on Twitter. So there are a lot of options to get hold of me, and please make use of your preferred one so that we can have a discussion, a conversation, a chat, rather than me just presenting software one way. You saw it from the title. This webinar is called Introduction into Visual Production Scheduling. So this should be an introductory webinar. I will not drill down into the fanciest and the most deep dive features of our production scheduling extension, although I will take also a deeper dive over the course of this webinar. But the topic of this is more like an introductory topic, and when it says introduction into visual production scheduling, then it should actually be read as introduction into visual scheduling, but also I will spend a few very general words and thoughts on scheduling itself, and kind of would like to introduce or reintroduce the topic of scheduling as such to you guys. So let's start very high level with a beautiful picture. And actually this beautiful picture is in essence the best representation I found for why customers need scheduling and what you or your customers should achieve with scheduling. Because ultimately the goal of production scheduling is to achieve an equilibrium. So you want to put like a balance out in the end with scheduling. You want to balance out the demand for your resources with the supply of your resources. So the purpose of scheduling to really is to make this balance of resource supply and resource demand happening. And this, in essence, is why you need scheduling. Scheduling brings like an equation to these two parts and make sure that there is a balance, that there is an equilibrium, and that things do not fall apart because you have too many demand and your resources cannot cope with this, and then this would crash, or whatever, you have too many resources and too little jobs and too little demand for this, and then the whole thing would also collapse. So scheduling in the end is a process that hopefully results and ends up in an equilibrium of supply of resources and demand for resources. And if we translate these very generic phrases into the business central language, then we want to put into an equilibrium. We want to achieve a balance between your capacity defined by your work and machine centers with the demand for that capacity, which comes through your production orders. This is what production scheduling is all about. And if we think about like these two parts of the equation, the work and machine centers and the production orders, then this also defines, let's say, the minimum data required for scheduling. So in order to model your internal resources, your internal supply of capacity, you need to set up work and machine centers in Business Central, and you need to have a shop calendar and apply this to your work center so that it then can get inherited to machine centers. And the shop calendar really is the most minimal feasible definition of capacity. I know that you can define a capacity on work center level, on machine center level. You can work with efficiency and you can do a lot of other fancy stuff. But as a minimum, we would need work centers with a shop calendar. Better when it comes to the VAPS, which we look at later on, is also you have work centers and machine centers. You have a shop calendar or multiple shop calendars if you run different work centers in different shifts. Apply this to the work centers, and then you have like the minimum feasible definition of capacity needed for scheduling. And I'm mentioning this because I, from time to time, meet customers or meet partners who say, well, we haven't set up our work centers and machine centers properly because for whatever reason, but we want to schedule. And I say, okay, what do you want to schedule? Well, we want to schedule your capacity. And then I ask, okay, how did you set it up in Business Central? Well, I thought you would do this for us. No ways, this will not work. If you want to schedule and if you want to achieve the equilibrium between the demand for your resources and the supply of your resources, then you need to set this up. And the same is true for the production orders. When it comes to production scheduling, you need to work with production orders. And typically these production orders, and in Business Central, thanks God, this is kind of given as a standard functionality for the product. These production orders have a due date. So this is the minimal feasible definition of when. When should this be ready? Very important for scheduling that we have the when information. But also we need to have the routing, because the routing is like kind of represents the minimal feasible definition of the demand. Who is needed, which machine center, which work center, which machine, whatever, which department, which production cell is needed, and how long it is needed. And you need to have the definition of who, how long, and when on the demand side of things to schedule. And again, I mentioned this because from time to time, I meet customers and partners who say, hey, we want to schedule. And then I say, okay, please show me your production orders. And they say, well, yeah, we use production orders, but we actually, and then I say, show me the routings. And they say, well, we don't actually use the routings. And then I ask why, and they say, well, this is every routing special for every production order because we are make to order and we have batch size of 1 and we don't want to take the effort to build a routing for every production order. And then there's another reason and yet another reason. And they say, okay, if you don't have the routing, if you don't have the definition of who and how long, how do you want to schedule? So if you really want to schedule and if you really want to kind of keep your data requirements and your exposure as minimum as possible, then you need to have set up your work centers, your machine centers with a shop calendar. You need to work with production orders. These production orders, they will have a due date. This is for sure. Business Central will not allow you to have a production order without a due date, but you also need to have routings. And once these ingredients are met, then actually you can schedule. And a product that will help you schedule those type of production orders with these kind of machine and work centers is the Visual Production Scheduler. This is one of our extensions that you find in AppSource that we have available for the Microsoft Cloud, but that we also have available for on-prem version. We have it starting from Business Central version 14.4 up to Business Central 17. It will be supported for Business Central 18 once this is there. And the VPS is also something that we have for NAV, starting from version 29 R2. And the VPS is the drag and drop scheduling front end to the really standard manufacturing module of Microsoft Dynamics Business Central. It doesn't add own business logic. It doesn't add own whatever scheduling mechanism and intelligence. It is just visualizing what you have in Business Central. It visualizes your work centers, your machine centers, the shop calendar, and the production orders with the routing, so the when, the who, and the how long. And then it allows you to make drag and drop changes to this kind of schedule. So let's have a look actually at this visual production scheduler, VPS, which from our point of view is really a very, very solid entry-level product into visual production scheduling when you work with Business Central or NAV. So let's switch to my Business Central instance and have a look. So this Business Central, and we can have a look. I have like work centers defined. I have my work centers defined. So here are a couple of work centers. Let's look at cutting. It falls into work center group. Actually, it has a capacity of 3, and there's a shop calendar code 1. So this cutting department has a specific its own calendar. So this shop calendar code is 1 shift Monday to Friday, whereas on my drilling machine I have like 2 shifts Monday to Friday, and then I have some outsourcing stuff which is 24/7 in my case. So this is subcontracting. Okay, so these are my work centers. Then and I have just a few of them, and then in my work centers I have my machine centers. And just to have a look at, I have 3 cutting machines, 2 drilling machine, 2 milling machines, a turning machine, a combined milling and turning machine, and then some assembly stations and some quality control stations, and then some painting inspection. They are all set up very easily with a capacity of 1, efficiency of 100%. So I made it really bare bone, and this models my supply. This models my supply of internal resources because, of course, I applied the shop calendars to my work and to machine centers, or to my machines, to my work centers, and then from the work centers it gets inherited to the underlying machine centers. So each of my work and machine center has a given capacity at a given point of time. So wow, now I have supply for my resources. So then let's look at the demand side of things, and the demand side of things comes from the production order. So let's look at production orders. Well, then the question is, at what kind of type of production are we looking at? Okay, let's look at released production orders. So I have, like you see, I have 4 released production orders, and there is 1 released production orders that already from the title is called simple. So let's have a look at this very simple production order. And so this production order, actually, it has a due date. 30th of January, I need something. What do I need? Well, I need 30 units of my item 3000. And now the question is, I do not only need to know when I need it, but also who will do this and how long it will take. And this is something that I find in the routing. So, and in this case, it is pretty simple. This is the most, or the almost most simple routing in the world. It only has 1 routing line. So in order to produce this item 3000, I need my drilling machine number 1. And the only reason why this is not the 100% simplest routing in the world is because I not only have runtime, so it takes me 10 minutes to produce 1 piece, but I also have setup time. So it takes me 600 minutes to 10 hours to set up the machine. So I have kind of insane setup times here, but this is because I was testing some advanced functionality that are not part of this demo. But this is pretty simple, isn't it? And then you see I have more production orders here, and some of them, they are more complex. So I have this one here, where I would require a cutting machine, I think a drilling machine and a milling machine. So again, go all the routings, and then I see, okay, there's some setup time, some run time, and also Business Central makes a suggestion when this actually should happen. So now you already see, okay, I have all these production orders, but when are they going to happen? Will I be ready in time or not? What the sequence is? It is really hard to overlook the entire schedule in one glance. And of course, you can build reports, or you can do say, okay, I want to know actually, I saw that this goes to my, what was it? This goes to my, I think it was the drilling machine 1, right? It goes to my routing, it goes to my drilling machine 1. So I could also look at my, and this is again still standard Business Central functionality. So I go to my machine center again, go to drilling 1 and say, okay, I want to see my machine center task list. And then I see what is going to happen on my drilling machine 1 and in which sequence. And I see also when this is supposed to happen. So I can get some visibility here from my standard Business Central figures and standard Business Central tables, but it is really hard to get a holistic overview of my production schedule. And this is where the visual production scheduler gets in, because remember, the purpose of production scheduling is to get the equilibrium of supply and demand, the equilibrium of my internal capacity with the demand for capacity. And this is what the VPS, the Visual Production Scheduler, is meant to help you achieve. And the best way of getting an equilibrium is to look at the whole picture, right? So imagine you would need to achieve this and would only see this part. So how many stones to position here until you have the equilibrium and until it breaks? It is just guesswork. And what we just did with Business Central, so looking either at the supply side, so either looking at the machine and the work centers, or at the demand side, so looking at the production, is a little bit guesswork, because you only look at this one element without seeing the other. This is what Business Central wants you to do. It either wants you to do this, like put a stone on top of the stone and then kind of recognize when this breaks, or do it the other way around, like, okay, we only look at this part of the equation and try by best guessing to see what we can squeeze in again. And with the VPS, you actually get this, and to stay in the analogy, you also get the tools to position the stones here on this, like, overall stone, so to say. So the VPS brings all the data required for scheduling in one view. So this is what we call the production order view, and we see we have our 4 released production orders here. It is this production order 10.11.07 with the one operation simple, and I see that there are these other released production orders. But hey, what we didn't see actually when I looked at my Business Central was we didn't see firm plan production orders, but I have also firm plan production orders here at in my shop. And if I would have planned production orders, then they would show up here as well. And then from here, from this production order view, I not only see when, for example, this production order is scheduled to run, or this production order is scheduled to run, but I also see when this is due. And of course, I can drill down into this and I see, okay, this production order, and this now follows the hierarchy we have in Business Central. The first line is the production order. Like, this is what we see on the production order header. Then we have the production order line, and you can have production orders with multiple lines. I don't have them here because I want to stay simple today in my example, but if there would be multiple production order lines, you would see them now one after the other. And then I can drill down, like I could drill down from here, like from the production order header into the production order lines, into the production order routing lines. And I see it's just one routing line here on the drilling machine 1, long setup, and then a bit of runtime. And you see, this is exactly what is represented here. this is the total time it takes to produce or to run this operation on this drilling machine. And you can rightfully say about, hey, how do I know about my setup time? Well, if I want to see, I can say, I think from here, right click menu, like, no, it's then view, sorry for that. Somewhere I have this. Anyway, now this is in the VAPS. We will look at this in the VAPS. Let me see there. I thought it's here, but sometimes I get confused by our own products. Sorry for that. Anyway, so it's in the other product that I will show you a little bit later. I could also see the setup time or the differentiation between the setup time and the runtime. But now you might say, okay, and actually what you see also here in the background in these gray and white areas, this is the work time in white and the non-work time of my machine center. And what I can do is, of course, I can drag and drop and say, I want to start this earlier. And then they see the net time to complete gets longer because now I have the non-work time in here. And I get this gray dot that indicates to me, okay, I have changed it here. I have changed it here in my visual production schedule, but not yet saved back into Business Central. So if I would look at this from a Business Central standpoint, then this routing line still starts on the 29th of 8 a.m., although I moved it to the 29th, 8 a.m., I moved it to the 28th, somewhere around lunchtime maybe. So now I can say from here, save, and then of course my Business Central gets updated, and now the Business Central data as a start date shows the exact date where I positioned it here. But before saving, actually, I would always think of, hey, is there any conflict that I'm creating on the drilling machine by moving that a bit earlier? So what I can say is on the right mouse click, I say, show me this operation in the capacity view, because I want to balance supply and demand. And here I'm more on the supply side of things. So now let's get to the demand side of things, where I see all my production orders, the same production orders that I had before, but now from the perspective no longer of the production order, but from the perspective of my work center group, of my work centers, and of my machine center. So here in drilling, I can actually expand this, and also cutting. Here I see my cutting lines and how they are busy or not. And then from my drilling line, and I can see, okay, by moving it here, there's actually no conflict on my drilling line. The drilling machine is pretty busy here. So I have some flexibility to change it like this or like this, because I have the flexibility on the drilling machine. I also could reassign actually this to a different machine, so I can reassign it to drilling, and now the kind of the setup time, the standard setup time of my drilling 2 machine is applied. So also this is taken care of, and then I can save it, and then this is written back into Business Central, and I changed my schedule accordingly and actually made use of having shorter setup times here on my drilling machine. So what we saw also with the VPS is that, and this is the standard front end to the drag and drop front end to Business Central. Business Central actually does not prevent this to happen. With Business Central, you actually can overload your machine center. So you see, okay, I actually have a lot of production orders running here on that day, and I see this is nothing I can handle at that date, but maybe, for example, I could resolve this a bit by reshuffling stuff from drilling 1 to drilling 2. And then I see, okay, this is eased a bit. Here is another firm planned production order, which maybe could be, well, maybe I can start a bit earlier because I have some free capacity here. So this is all manual drag and drop scheduling, but also facing some of the challenges that you have when you work with Business Central, but with the big advantage that you see conflicts like this earlier and faster and better understandable, and you can also look at the overall utilization from a chart like this, where we see, okay, what is my work center? What is the load? What is my machine center? So I see, okay, cutting is here fully loaded on the departmental level, but I actually have cutting 3 free. So I actually could reassign works from cutting machine 1 to cutting 3 to balance this out, because in the end, I want to balance out supply and demand. And here, I'm demanding more capacity of cutting 1 than I have, but I have some free capacity of cutting 3. And if these machines are complementary, then I actually could go here in the second week of February and move stuff from my cutting machine 1 to the cutting machine 3. So this is in very essence, in a very first example, what the VPS is about. So this is visual production scheduling. So now I want to go back to production orders quickly and put another perspective to this, what looked really simple. And I want to kind of encourage you to also follow me a little bit on like the joy and the essence and the need of semantics. And to what I want to refer is, when it comes to scheduling, differentiation is really crucial, because if you differentiate tasks that you as a customer have to do in your process of managing your shop, or if you as a partner can guide your customer towards selecting the right tool for the right purpose by better differentiating between different tasks, then you really help avoiding pain, and you really help like kind of to use the right tool for the right purpose. Because what you see on the screen here, this is a drill, this is a drill, and this is a drill. And what you do with the drill and the drill and the drill is called drilling. But depending on which task you have to do and depending on which purpose you follow, it really makes a big difference which drill to choose, right? Just imagine you would use this drill for this task. Ouch, very painful. I mean, I hate if my dentist uses this drill. I really hate this. But if this guy would come with this drill, I would just run away. And on the opposite is also true. Let's imagine you would have to do this task and you are called to go drilling, and then you come up and show up with this tool. Well, they would fire you, or they would laugh at you. Or they would laugh at you, and then you have to buy them a lot of beer because you are so stupid. So, and this is all drilling. And when it comes to drilling, this is so obvious that this is a different drilling than this, and this is a different drilling than this and this. But when it comes to scheduling, people tend to mix up things and then say, okay, we want to plan and we want to schedule. And by the way, I have a task that is running and it's running longer. How should I reschedule this so that it can start whatever? So differentiation is not only crucial when it comes to drilling, but it's also crucial when it comes to running a shop and planning and scheduling for the execution of your business and your shop. And so when it comes to planning and scheduling, and this is a slide I used, I found from my friend Shune Lose from Use Dynamics. I adapted it and I used it already in a webinar that I did in autumn last year. But when it comes to planning and scheduling, there are actually different time horizons. And when I do demos, people mix it. And I say, okay, show me how the utilization was last year. And then I say, well, you know, this is reporting. This is today, and reporting looks back. What I'm doing as NETRONIC, what we're doing at NETRONIC, we provide you with scheduling tools. We don't do reporting. For reporting, you look into the history, so please talk to somebody who gives you business intelligence. Go and take whatever, Power BI or stuff like this, but this is not where we look at, because this is reporting, this is looking back. We with our products look from today on. So we look at today and in the future, but really today, looking at today, this is execution. This is what is happening on the shop floor right now. This is also not our strong part. This is where you have work order lists, where we have shop floor control system, where we have MES system, time and attendance system. And then comes scheduling. And this is maybe what is going on from today for the next 2 weeks, for the next 3 weeks. So this may vary, and we have customers who plan from tomorrow to 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 9 weeks in advance, but definitively with a given time horizon. And this is where visual scheduling can do the job. And this is where you need to schedule critical items, where you need to find bottlenecks, and where you really very down to earth, like I showed you with the VPS, try to manage the equilibrium of supply and demand for your resources. And then we have the planning. And this is like from after that period to a longer period after. This is master planning. This is MRP, material requirements planning, where you kind of high level plan for upcoming demand. You do not schedule it right now, but you plan for the demand to come. And then there's long-term planning, and there's the asset budgeting. And all of this is all of these elements. Sometimes I come into customer demos, and then they say, okay, show me how my plan will look like in 18 months from now. And I say, well, most likely nothing I can help with, because we look at scheduling. We look at this granular thing of bringing demand and supply together for the next couple of days and weeks. Likewise, I have customers say, okay, look, tell me how my schedule was yesterday. Okay, this is BI. So it is really important that you also, for your customers, make a differentiation between these planning and scheduling and execution horizons, and pick the right tool for the right purpose. And the good thing is, Business Central out of the box comes, and I will now only look at this part, because this has to the left-hand side and to the right-hand side some impacts for our tool. So Business Central out of the box comes with something that I looked at right now. It comes with a Machine Center task list, right? And this can help you to run your machine, and this can help you to run your shop, because people running the Machine Center can, from the Machine Center task list, see what is going to happen today. And then Business Central also out of the box gives you a super powerful tool for master planning, and this is the planning worksheet. But Business Central out of the box has a gap when it comes to scheduling. This is improper for scheduling, and this will not work for scheduling. And in a minute, I can show you why. And we provide the gap, so we provide the visual scheduling, and the tool we looked at is the visual production scheduler. So, and here it is really important, the VPS here, it is really important to understand how the visual production scheduler integrates with the other tools that you get from Business Central. Well, the thing is, the VPS that we looked at really closely integrates with what is happening on the execution level. So what you do on the VPS has an impact on the Machine Center task list and vice versa, but the VPS right now does not have an integration with the planning worksheet. So they stay side by side, and they don't know of each other, because the VPS like kind of is the bare bone product, is the basic drag and drop scheduler for Business Central, and hence we wanted to keep it lean and we wanted to keep it simple. But let's have a look actually what this means. And let's go back to Business Central, and let's see, I'm here in my schedule, and let's remember I made this change here. So I moved this operation here to start on the 28th of January now on my drilling machine number 2. Okay, so now let's go to my drilling machine number 2 and let's have a look at my machine center. Sorry, and I don't get it from here. Drilling machine number 2. Let's see, my machine center task list for drilling machine 2 just has this one task. It tells me that I need to work on production order 101107. I have no setup. I have 10 minutes per unit. And I should start on the 28th of January at 8 a.m. So now, if I am the operator or the person on the shop floor responsible for drilling machine number 2, then this actually could be a very proper tool for me, because I know what I would have to do when, for which production order, and it would also give me like a time budget. It would tell me, okay, start at 8, finish at 1. Right? So I know exactly how long this should take. And if I would be the operator running drilling machine 1, then I see, okay, I have a bit more workload, but I can also sort this by start date or starting time, but start date is better. And I see, okay, this is what I'm going to do first, and when I'm done with this, I will do that. And also, if I look carefully here, I see, okay, tomorrow actually maybe there is some pain because I have to start something at 8, which takes until 7 p.m. But it's something else that I need to start at 10:30. So I would kind of call my supervisor and say, hey, are you kidding me? Should I work on 2 things in separate? And they would tell you, oh, the one is firm plant. You can ignore this. You can move this out. But everything we do with the VPS is really intersected with the machine center task list. So let's look at this again from this one example that we have here. So sorry for that. Now I'm the shop floor guy, and if for some reason I know that I will start on this not at 10 a.m., but if I start on this at 8 a.m., but I start with this at 10 a.m., then I can make the change here, right? I can say, okay, I start at this at 10 a.m., and then it tells me, okay, with my time budget that I have, I will be ready by 3 p.m. And now if I go back to the visual production scheduler, it is still here. But if I reload the data, so if I fetch what has been changed in Business Central, then hopefully this does not break now. And then you see this is moved. You see now it's moved starting to 10 a.m. And let's make the change again. Let's say move back. Machine Center, drilling 2, task list. And so now if I'm operator, say, okay, hey, actually, no, I will not be able to start this at 10, but I will start at 11. Then data changed. I fetch the new data from Business Central by reload and then have a look, not just here. It should be moved by an hour. You saw it moved, and if I hover over it, then you see, okay, start date, third information from the top, 11 a.m. The same is true if I say, okay, I want to move this to the next day, and then I save it from here, look at it again from my Machine Center task list. Sorry. Drilling 2, process, updated to next day, 8 a.m. So this is really, really nicely intersected. But now let's have a look at this again. And now let's say, okay, this actually, I'm happy. For whatever reason, I'm happy with this schedule. I have a pretty solid schedule here for the most of February. So let's see if there is some new demand that I should take care of for March. So this is something that, for example, I now would ask MRP, like, hey, is there a new demand for the beginning of March so that I get new production orders that I can schedule? So what I would do is I would calculate a regenerative plan starting on 1st of March. I would say, okay, and I would run it because there is some new demand that is in there, but it also tells me that, oh my God, there is a production order that will get cancelled. So there is a production order that I scheduled before, and it's the production order 101688. It's a firm planned production order. It's a firm planned production order that I scheduled before. And let's go to the production order view again. So it's this one, I think. The production order I scheduled before here, and I moved it for whatever reason here, or let's say I actually schedule it again. I showed it in the capacity view because for some reason I recognized, okay, actually, let me see if this is the right one. Yeah, if I start this on, like, it's a little bit late, but if I start this on milling 2 instead of milling 1, maybe, and I finish it by Friday here, then I can also bring forward the cutting and utilize the cutting machine number 3, for example, starting here because I have free capacity. And so I will finish this a little bit earlier because I know that somebody was asking for this. Let's assume that this is my case. Then I save this. And now I scheduled it. I worked on this production order, right? And if I run now MRP, let's do it again. Let me just create a new plan here. If I run now MRP and run MRP and say I want to get new demand for starting from March the 1st, and I scheduled something for February, then let's say MRP currently overrules what I scheduled, and I say, hey, cancel this and create it new and move it to someone later. And if I would carry out, without looking at all the details, if I would carry out this plan, so if I say, okay, actually, I trust what MRP is doing, then MRP has deleted a production order that was in before, and this is the 101688. It's no longer there, but it added some new here for a later point in time to meet a demand that I will have in March. So if this is still okay, because the demand changed and MRP is the only source for my demand, then this is okay. But there are some implications of this. And I wanted, although this is an introductory webinar, to make you aware of the fact that the way of how our products are built and how they integrate with Business Central, there are some implications. So if you have a customer who don't work with MRP, well, then this is no problem at all. Then they can happily schedule with with the VAPS and enjoy all the drag and drop functionalities there. But it is really important that when you work with products like Business Central, but also with a product like ours, you need to mind the gap. You need to be aware of what is missing. And what larger manufacturers typically miss in the scenarios that I just described is they miss an integration of scheduling and planning. They are aware that this is a difference. It is a difference between scheduling and planning, and they miss this integration. And they also miss some stuff that is missing in Business Central, which is finite capacity scheduling. You saw before that I could significantly overload my work center or my machine centers. They miss information about material availability when you scale. You saw I could move forward stuff without getting a warning that material was missing. And they also miss the capability to run multiple simulations of a schedule and then compare them. And because these gaps exist in Business Central, but also the way of how, let's say, bread and butter product is built that integrates with standard Business Central, we build a product that first closes all these gaps that we see and saw in Business Central, and then we could work on a better integration, and we build a product that enhances Business Central and then allows for a more powerful planning and scheduling. And this is the Visual Advanced Production Scheduler, VAPS. And if what I show you in the next couple of minutes is of interest for you, then I highly encourage you to meet me again in a week from now, because then I will run an entire webinar on the VAPS where we just talk about how to build a plan that optimizes for reduced setup times. But now I just want to give you a very introductory glance into the Visual Advanced Production Scheduler, and the VAPS is the first finite capacity scheduling extension. So it brings finite capacity scheduling as an extension, and it fully integrates into Dynamics 365 Business Central. And when we remember this sheet, and now, sorry for that, it should, and this is it should read now Visual Advanced Production Scheduler. We have the Machine Center task list and we have the planning worksheet. And with the VAPS, we not only have the same integration with the Machine Center task list that you saw before, but we also have the integration with the planning worksheet. So the VAPS knows about the planning worksheet and the planning worksheet knows about the VAPS. So with this, we can really establish a cycle of planning, scheduling, executing, planning, scheduling, executing, or whatever the iterations are. And we can have a brief look at the VAPS as well. And for that, let me go back here. And now let's leave the Visual Production Scheduler and let's go to the VAPS. And with the VAPS, you see it's a more complex product, and you see it already from here with the VPS, just one menu enter. With the VAPS, a zillion of things. We can forget about all of them. We just go here because with the VAPS, we can build simulations. So the first thing to do is when we have the VAPS, we want to create a new simulation. So we want to build like a version of the schedule that we can play around with. And once we have played with it, we can build a new one that we can also have and another one. So let me create just a new simulation for the purpose of creating a simulation. So now there's a second simulation that I created. So now I can build scenarios with both of these data sets, and then actually I have the capability to compare them by some KPIs, which I won't do now. And then when I'm happy with one of these simulations, I can publish them, and then the publish mirrors the save from the VPS and it updates Business Central. So if I go to the simulation, it looks pretty much the same like you saw it before, with the exception Then we have the standby resource, and the standby resource collects all production orders that have been scheduled in Business Central but not yet with the VAPS. And you saw with this one that I moved earlier on to drilling 2. This was scheduled by Business Central, but not yet by the VAPS, and hence it is on standby. And now my first task as the scheduler is to bring all of these production orders from standby to the schedule. And as this can be very, very tedious, we have a lot of scheduling tools within the VAPS to allow for some more automated intelligence and algorithmic scheduling. So I can, for example, say, hey, I want to schedule them and add them all to their work and machine centers. So let me do so. I add them all to the work and machine centers, and I know the work and machine centers because I have the routings, and the routing tells me the how and the how long. And now I added them to the work and machine centers, and you see there is no more overlap on the work and machine center, but you see some of these runs late because now I schedule with finite capacity, and once cutting machine 1 is busy, then some things have to wait, and then they have to wait rather long. Like this guy has to wait rather long because it starts here, and then we have to wait on the drilling machine very long before it can run here. So you might say, okay, now this is pretty shit because I have some free alternative machines, and this is exactly what you can do with the VAPS. So let me undo this. You can, by the way, redo and undo. So let me undo this so that we have everything up again here. So then I can say, hey, I want to add them all to the schedule. But if there are allowed alternatives, and this is something that you as a user can define, then please make use of all these alternate resources so that I get all my stuff done at earliest. And now if I do this, we run a couple of iterations, and now you see, like with a magic, more or less magic button, all of my production orders have been scheduled in the most efficient way possible to all my work and machine centers. I see that especially my cutting department, my drilling department is pretty much busy this week and the week after. And then I see how this boils down into the other department. And I see also that some stuff here is turning late. So I now could think of what corrective actions I can take to, for example, accelerate this to kind of not miss the due date. But there are a lot more tools, and especially now, if some of these resources here, like cutting, if this would be, or drilling, if there would be long setup times from the large drill to the small drill or vice versa, then in the session next week, Tuesday, I will show you how you can set up or how you can optimize the sequence of production orders on a certain machine depending on certain attributes of your items. But this is something I will not show you now. I just wanted to give you a very, very brief introduction to the VAPS and show you that, like with functions like add all, including all the allowed alternatives, that there is a lot of scheduling automation coming with the VAPS. And what the VAPS also has, like I have now this color scheme that looks exactly the same like before, with the released in orange and the firm planned in blue. But I said there is actually a better integration with the planning worksheet. So what does this mean? And now let's, for just 1 minute, dive into the VAPS settings. And one of the VAPS settings is the Mrp setup. And I actually have this enabled. So this means I switched on that the VAPS should know about the planning worksheet and vice versa. And I have something defined here. This is the frozen period. The frozen period is defined as 2 weeks from now. And this frozen period determines the period of time where my scheduling and the VAPS is owner of the production orders. So if I scheduled something within the frozen period, then no planning worksheet run will change this. It will not delete it, it will not move it, it will not change it, no at all. So within this frozen period, within this period from now into 2 weeks time, the VAPS is king, and MRP planning and the planning worksheet will not change it. For every production orders that are not released, so if a firm plan production is outside this frozen period, so everything that I scheduled that happens after these 2 weeks, it is my definition that I say, okay, then I want MRP to be the owner of this, because if the demand changes for whatever reason, then I want MRP to make sure that I get this balance between supply and demand. I want MRP change the production orders, and then I can fine-tune them, fine schedule them again. And if I look into my simulation, then I actually see this vertical line here. So this vertical line is today. This is the end of the frozen period. And we actually have a color mode that we call the Mrp View. And this tells me that everything that is shown in red will not get changed by MRP. But if I move something, let's say to sit completely outside this VAPS window. So if I scheduled something, a firm plan production order to start after the end of the frozen period, then you see also it changes the color, and this now in this view tells me, okay, this is subject to change by the planning worksheet by MRP, because now this falls into the territory of the planning worksheet and of MRP. So with the VAPS, we make this differentiation between the various tools and a much tighter integration with them. And with this, I would like to conclude the webinar with 3 closing recommendations. So the first one, and this is really conceptually important if you're a customer, and this is also conceptually important if you consult your customers. It is crucial, it is really crucial to differentiate execution, scheduling, and planning. All of this is drilling, and they are very, very related with each other, but they are different. And with Business Central, you as a customer, you get tools to plan and tools to execute, but there are no tools for scheduling. Business Central has no scheduling capabilities. So if you're a customer, you really need to get an extension to help with scheduling. Otherwise, you have this gap between execution and planning. And if you're a partner and work with manufacturing customers, I highly recommend that you give your customers also an appropriate scheduling tool, and not let them schedule with this or with this tool, but give them the right tool that they need, and you see it will be fun for your customers. The second recommendation is, independent of which tool you take, independent if you take the VPS or the VAPS, or if you decide to do it on a whiteboard or with Excel or by any other tool, these tools will help you with your job, but they will not do magic. So these tools require constant work, and these tools require that you establish processes and scheduling routines, or that you help your customers to establish processes and scheduling routines. So customers will plan with the MRP, then they will schedule, then they will execute. Then in the execution, something happens. The machine breaks, or they have to run the machine slower, or they are faster, or they have crap or whatever. So then you need to schedule again, you execute, something happens, you need to schedule again, then you execute again, and then you have new demand coming in. So you need to plan again. And with running the MRP, the planning worksheet again, you have the need to schedule, and so on and so forth. So this is constant work, and these things are interlinked, but it requires processes, when to plan, when to schedule, what to execute. Then if things in execution change, when should I schedule? When should I replan? So you need to have definitions and processes in place, and without having good processes and routines in place, the value of the tools will be lower. And then the third recommendation is, because this can become quite complex, and you saw already the level of complexity that I achieved in an introductory webinar, my closing recommendation is my favorite phrase: you have to learn to walk before you run. So do it in small steps. Make sure you or your customers gain and achieve a certain level of scheduling and planning and execution fitness before you really start to run. Don't get out of the door with your running shoes on and try to run the marathon, or try to run the 100-meter sprint with whatever, under 12 seconds. Don't do this. Walk first. Get the running shoes on and walk. Then start to run, then to run faster, and then either run the marathon or become the sprinter, whatever you like. But really take your time to learn scheduling, take your time to learn scheduling tools, and also take your time to establish the right processes to work with your scheduling tool. This is really important. Otherwise, you won't get the benefits of visual production scheduling. And visual production scheduling can bring a lot of value to you and your clients, especially because this very crucial functionality for manufacturers is completely missing within Business Central. And with this, I'm at the end of what I prepared for you today. Thank you very much for staying with me, for listening to me, for watching my presentation. If you have any question, then please ask now or afterwards. I didn't see a question during the presentation, so it was either clear or boring. And it's you upon to rate this. So thank you again for your attention. Stay safe and healthy. We will publish a recording tomorrow or day after tomorrow on the website. And if you have a question afterwards, please let me know. Thanks. Have a nice evening if you're in Europe. Good night in Asia, and have a wonderful day in the United States. Thanks. Bye-bye.